unidentified flying objects. Some people firmly believe they carry visitors from other planets. Others say there's always a logical explanation having nothing to do with extraterrestrials.
UFOs love the subject, but there is now a panel of former pilots and government officials calling on the U.S. at least investigate the possibilities. Gary Tuckman is doing a little investigating of his own.
If you flew on Air France from Nice to London on January 28, 1994, your captain says he saw a UFO 1,000 feet long just outside your window.
It seemed to be a huge flying disc.
The now retired pilot is one of 14 men, mainly former government and military officials from 7 different countries, talking about their UFO experiences.
It disappeared in about 10 to 20 seconds.
This conference took place in Washington, and the cast of characters was almost strangely, well, conventional. One of the believers, former governor of Arizona, Mike Symington.
I saw something that defied logic and challenged my reality.
During a visit to Phoenix, Symington described to me what he saw.
If you had been here 10 years ago and standing out here and looking up there at the lights and the view, you would have been astounded. You would have been amazed.
The so-called Phoenix lights were seen by many people in 1997. Skeptics say they were military aircraft or flares, but not the former governor.
It was probably some form of an alien spacecraft.
Lots of agreement on this panel. This retired Iranian Air Force pilot said he saw a UFO while flying.
It looked similar to a star, but bigger and brighter.
General Parviz Jafari says he tried to fire a missile, but much of his plane became inoperative.
All the instrument was fluctuating, the radio had garbled, even I couldn't have communication with my pilot in my back seat with operating the radio.
So none of your equipment worked, your missiles didn't work. Do you think it's because this was an alien from
Oh,
another
yes.
world? You're sure of that?
Yeah, I'm sure.
This retired U.S. Air Force sergeant stationed in England said he walked up to a UFO that landed in a forest.
It maneuvered through the trees and shot off at an unbelievable rate of speed.
A man running for president just said he saw a UFO.
I did, and the rest of the account, it was unidentified flying object.
And so did a man who was president.
I and about 25 others saw something in the air that changed colors and was round and came.
Although Jimmy Carter says he doesn't think it was from another planet, most of these people differ on that point and want the FAA to investigate all these claims. But the FAA says that's not its job. We manage the aircraft that we're talking to. UFOs are called UFOs because they're unidentified, and we're not talking to them. And it's precisely because no one's talking that everybody here is trying harder to make them believe. Gary Tuckman, CNN, Washington.
Well, whether you're a believer or a skeptic when it comes to extraterrestrials, we think you'll be interested in the views of our next guest. Stephen Bassett is a political activist who lobbies for what he considers to be the truth about UFOs. I'm pleased to say he joins us now from Washington. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Bassett.
Good morning.
A high-level conference that you saw featured in our last report, 14 men, mainly of government and military backgrounds. Why are these people coming together now?
Well, I have to point out that this excellent press conference, which was put together by the Coalition for Freedom of Information and film producer James Fox, is only the latest example of witnesses of high-ranking station coming forward to talk about events and evidence. In May of 2001, the testimony of 75 such witnesses was presented to the media, with 21 of those witnesses in person in that same room. And there was some pending follow-up by some of the major networks, including ABC. But unfortunately, all of that follow-up ended 4 months later with, of course, the attacks on September 11th. Now, another effort is being made to bring these witnesses forward. There's scores of individuals that have worked in government, military, intelligence agencies, defense contractors have been coming forward since 1991, and their collective testimony, and I've reviewed most of it, clearly demonstrates that there's an extraterrestrial presence behind this phenomena, which has been proven by the basic research that goes back all the way to the 1950s.
Mr. Bassett, have you seen a UFO?
No.
You haven't seen a UFO, but you're utterly convinced in this time of digitally mastery, I should say, that they do exist. Tell us about some of the compelling images that have, brought you to this position.
Look, these things have been filmed and videoed going all the way back to the 40s. That technology didn't exist then. Look, I have many of the organizations out there, including MUFON, CUFOS, NICAP, APRO, have reviewed this material. They have studied sightings. going back 60 years.
But the video from Roswell, people say that was doctored. I mean, those that argue that on that front.
I'm not sure what video you're talking about. There's over 200 witnesses that have come forward regarding Roswell. What I'm trying to say is the collective evidence, which is enormous, nearly 10,000 published books, documentaries, papers, journals, plus the first-hand testimony of individuals of rank and station of the quality of Dr. Edgar Mitchell, a man who walked on the moon for NASA and is a PhD from astrophysics. These people are coming forward and saying flat out, they have been told by people in government, as I have, that in fact there is an extraterrestrial presence behind this phenomena, that we are in fact being engaged, and the government is aware of this and has chosen to embargo this information.
Why has the government chosen to embargo this information?
Because when this fell in their lap in the late 40s, they were in the middle of an incipient Cold War. Nuclear weapons were being developed by the Soviet Union. Missiles were being developed by the Soviet Union. And these were difficult times, and they rightly concluded they needed to understand this phenomenon, try to get some crash vehicles, which they did, find out about the technology, before they came to the public and said, guess who's come to dinner? Unfortunately, that went on not for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It's now in its 60th year, and simply the embargo has lost its purpose. It's no longer appropriate, and it simply has to come to an end. And frankly, it's coming apart. Presidential candidates are being asked about it now. It's all over the news. It's just the beginning. I think this embargo is close to being basically finished.
What makes you believe that it's close to being lifted?
Because the American media, when they finally get on a story, when they finally kind of loosen the shackles of government misinformation and get the bit between their teeth, they can run down a story like nobody. And I see that starting to happen. When you see Chris Matthews asking Richardson about this question, when you see Tim Russert, the dean of television journalism in this city, asking Kucinich about this question, I expect Hillary Clinton to get a question soon, and I can assure you I and my colleagues know a great deal about what Kucinich really knows on this issue, what Richardson really knows on this issue, and most definitely what Hillary Clinton knows on this issue, and they're no longer going to be able to avoid this subject. They're going to no longer be able to avoid these questions. They're going to have to go on the record and let the American people decide whether they're being mendacious or whether they're being truthful.
Yeah, let's just go back to that point about these presidential hopefuls who you say know more than they're letting on. Why are they keeping it under wraps?
Because it's just so difficult to take on the really tough stuff. Everyone wants to be president without having to really take on the issues. They want to obfuscate, dodge, weave, tap dance, triangulate, and just sort of glide into the White House. And those days really have to end. The American people are disgusted. The approval rating for the president is an historic low. The approval rating for Congress is unbelievable. It's in the teens because no one wants to simply say the truth about what is going on, not only in this area, but in a number of areas. The American government said there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. There weren't. The press did not really run that down. Now hundreds of thousands of people are dead. For 60 years, the American government has said, no, there's nothing to this phenomenon in the sky, nothing there, nothing to be seen, move along. That's not true. They have lied, and the press has gone along with that. That has got to end. We need a press that it's an adversary to the government, that challenges everything that comes forward, and this issue is a good start. These witnesses need to be in front of congressional hearings immediately so their testimony can be taken under oath in front of cameras and before the American people.
All right, Stephen Bassett, many thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Wow, interesting.
Very interesting, although he hasn't seen one himself.